Hello and welcome to Pluribus Unum's Fireside Chats. Not as good as FDR's, but hey, it's something. Last podcast of January, which means we will be close to the time period where we finally started getting back to the normal schedule of videos. Boy, did you miss me when I made actual videos instead of these podcasts? Sure seems that, because the gun episode didn't do so well in the view count wise. And don't worry, you'll be seeing things that'll actually clue you in on some of the possible episodes that will be coming up soon enough. Hope the break was worth it. But it wasn't worth it in one regard, because there was something that I was going to do this month that I was going to possibly make it so that it wouldn't possibly delay future episodes or whatever. But that didn't happen for reasons. I don't know why. One thing that I might do is also, since I have a lot of the scripts for episodes, since I have the let me just do a quick check, because I don't know if I have the ones. Okay, let's see. Next month planned. Next month planned. Next month planned. Next month planned. And yeah, I would say, I guess I could just start record. I guess a thing that I could do is literally just record all of the episodes that I have planned for the next couple of months and just do that. So that way the recording process is out of the way, so I can, just go through the rest of them just like that. Some of the episodes I have planned, I do really some of the. Let me check the ones that I have written out. Yeah. A couple of the ones that are coming out pretty soon. I really do. I like them, but I don't know if I'm gonna be wowed by them. But I mean, it is what it is. I really gotta get some of the other larger ones out of the way. I'm gonna get some of those it sounds like I'm gonna start. It sounds like I might be getting back to the point where I'm having that problem again. But regardless, let's just hopefully things will work out for the best. But with that out of the way, let's get right into the news. The first news story is coming from Japan. The Prime Minister, Tagachi, has announced that she will dissolve the parliament and call for a snap election to take place on February the 8th. Which means I won't have time to do a foreign election episode on the Japanese political scene. Even though I do kind of like the Japanese political scene. It's a somewhat interesting political scene, even though it seems to be somewhat, not necessarily basic, but let's just get into, we're just going to go cover a very brief synopsis of it here. Japan currently has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, technically 10. Well, I guess technically a little more, but it's a little bit here and there. But it has broadly 10 political parties represented in the Diet. But they've kind of in Japan, the political scene is basically completely dominated by a political party called the Liberal Democratic Party. It's a generic right-wing nationalist political party. Japan, of all of the Asian countries, is seen as historically the most right-ish leaning, or the most nationalistic leaning. It did have a bit of a stint of Japanese socialism in the 90s, I think, but for the most part, it has been largely, for a long period of time, it's been the politics of Japan has been largely dominated by the right, to the point where Japan is sometimes referred to as a 1.5 party system, because the Liberal Democratic Party has basically ruled borderline uninterrupted in Japan since 1955, except for 2 brief stints where they had the left-wing groups, I think it was the Japanese Socialist Party, took control. And in Japan, very rarely has there been that much. There is technically opposition in Japan, but the opposition is let's just say weary. Let's just get into some of the opposition. So most of the opposition, let's just get into some the other shit. Aside from the major factions, then there's Nippon Inshin no Kai, which is a broadly libertarian-ish political party. It has 38 seats. There's the Democratic People's Party, which has 28 seats. Well, the Democratic Party for the People is what it's called. It's again a broadly right-wing party. There are 2 left-wing parties in Japan, 2 parties that I would say definitively can be considered left-wing: the Japanese Communist Party, which is obviously a communist party, and Reiwa Shinsengumi, which is a left-wing populist party. but they have 9 and 8 seats, not respectively, like switch them. Reiwa has 9, the Japanese Communist Party has 8. And 2 new political parties have been rising to the plate. Sansieto, which is like a extremely far-right nationalist party in Japan. And then there's the Conservative Party of Japan, which is a right-wing populist party, which is technically to the left of Sansieto. But basically, those are 2 political parties that basically say that the dominant Liberal Democratic Party is too left-wing. And it's like, that's a very interesting development, because again, Japan has a large, nationalist problem, and they've had a nationalist problem for a long time. One of the most famous incidents in Japanese political history is a moment where a Japanese nationalist ran up and stabbed the primary leader of the Japanese Socialist Party. And that kind of also starts leading into some of the things, the Liberal Democratic Party base is cracking. We have the rise of these 2 ultra-nationalist political parties, but there's also one more thing. Japan, the reason why it's called a 1.5 political party system is because for a long period of time, the Liberal Democratic Party was in an alliance with a political party known as Komeito. Komeito is a party that can broadly be described as it's broadly described as a Buddhist democratic party. And when I say Buddhist democratic, I essentially mean Christian democracy. What Christian democracy is, right? But replace Christian with Buddhist. It's a political party that is one of those religious fundamentalist parties that advocates, for right-wing social policies but left-wing economic policies. And that was one of the main reasons they were able to maintain power in Japan, is because Komeito was able to give them the smallest edge. They usually do fine regardless of Komeito, but Komeito gives them the edge that just pushes them a little over the top so that there's no need to even worry about a broader alliance, because otherwise they might have to start looking towards other political parties for alliance. And I think in the most recent Japanese elections, they actually did have to start looking for more people to join the alliance. They just basically picked off a lot of the more right-leaning independents. But in 2025, the Liberal Democratic Party and Komeito alliance finally broke. And in a bigger twist of fate, Komeito announced that they were going to be forming an alliance with the Constitutional Democratic Party of Japan, which is the big center-left opposition party of Japan. And in this upcoming election, they will be aligning with each other, which does lead into a big thing. In the current seat totals for the parties are, the Liberal Democratic Party now has 195 seats, and the Centrist Reform Alliance, which is the alliance, has 166 seats. So now, all they need is 67 seats. Haha, Gen Alpha meme, haha, funny. All they need is that many seats to win. And there is a little worries, because they're pointing out the fact that Sansieto has already announced that they intend to start running candidacies in Liberal Democratic Party seats. And it's there's a possibility that they could start picking off the very few members of the seats that they need. Now, granted, poll number-wise, the Liberal Democrats are still in the lead. The most recent poll has 27.4% for the Liberal Democrats, and then the Centrist Reform Alliance has 12.2%. And in the proportional seats, they have a pretty overwhelming, results, a 19.1 lead. The only saving grace at this particular moment is that in the polls of 2026, the highest polling results were never the Liberal Democrats. They were the highest polling party, but the highest polling results were nobody. So that's their only possible gain, that right now, maybe they could just pick off the whole, people finally getting sick and tired of the Liberal Democratic Party. That's basically the only option that is left for Japan to really... And I would prefer if there would be a Reiwa Japanese Communist Party alliance that finally manages to take over, but, whatever. Sometimes you just gotta go with it. When Pinochet had to go, when Pinochet left, they couldn't immediately elect some more Allende's. They had to make a couple of they had to put a couple of libs in the spot. Whatever. libs get a chance to, do whatever they want, but, at the end of the day, only really a socialist can save the day. But regardless, speaking of saving the day, apparently, this is infuriating. We're still having to talk about the stupid Greenland thing, because this is the weird thing that is going on. Trump literally went to NATO and Davos and started talking about Greenland. And he said a lot of really stupid things at this event. One of the things somehow made people, people really are seeing how people are really seeing just we're in fucking dire situations, because one of the things that happened was that he said that the reason why he's even entertaining the idea of going to war to fight over Greenland is because he's mad that he wasn't given the Nobel Peace Prize by Norway, even though everyone's like, what does that have to do with anything? And it turns out people are like, wait, does he think that Norway and Denmark are the same country? And I'll head my bet and say that he does. And one of the things that happened was that Donald Trump has announced that he had reached the framework of a deal with NATO over Greenland's future. And there is literally nothing being said. Literally, he is saying that they have worked out a deal, and literally everybody else who is involved is saying, we have literally no clue what he is talking about. Because literally, the head of NATO has openly stated that right now he's literally talking to other European countries in NATO to work up military plans to defend Greenland. And what is apparently literally being stated is that the concession, quote unquote, that Donald Trump has gotten is that now the US can deploy more forces in Greenland, which is something that the United States already has permission to do under the 1951 Defensive Greenland Agreement. So it's literally the same thing that happened with Claudia Sheinbaum, last year. Remember when it was Claudia Sheinbaum said oh, we're going to give you 10,000 troops at the border, and then you don't give us any more weapons. And then Donald Trump's okie dokie, we'll do that, and we will not tariff you anymore. And then it's oh yeah, well, that's a deal that's literally been negotiated in the Biden administration. And then Canada did the same thing where it's oh, this was a deal that was negotiated in the Biden administration, and they just told Donald Trump that they're going to do the same thing that they were already doing. And then Colombia did literally the same thing. Literally, he's doing nothing. This is the thing. It's this is I just gotta say it. Donald Trump's a Make-A-Wish kid. He literally is a Make-A-Wish kid. He's dying, and everybody is literally treating him like he's a president. He is dying of something. Dude, look at pictures of him. He is literally multiple different colors, and none of them are the color of a human being. Bro, you can literally take a picture of Donald Trump, put it in Photoshop, and then click the fucking click draw tool, and come up with people have literally made color palettes of Donald Trump, and he looks disgusting. It's like that fucking disgusting purple brown, purple black thing of his hand, and then he looks like he's got fucking jaundice. He looks like he's dying of a liver failure. It's he is literally he talks about oh, I nicked my hand on a table. It's dude, you have that's a scar that's been there for 3 years. What is happening? And the thing is, the people in he's literally just doing this because the people in his base are infants. They genuinely think that he's winning. Literally, it's you don't know a single thing about what you were talking about. He's not winning. Literally every single thing that he has claimed he is winning on, he is not. I do not understand it. I just cannot fathom how any single person who literally has I just don't get it. This is literally the biggest embarrassment ever. He just throws a temper tantrum. They give him nothing, and he walks away claiming he is victorious. He's literally what the fucking, school propaganda said that fucking North Korea was. Because genuinely, it's just, it is so strange that this guy is actually the president of the United States, and there are people who take him seriously. This just doesn't make any sense in any sense of the word. The only, people are literally trying to find ways to rationalize this in any real sense. And the only rationalization that can come up of this is that Donald Trump is trying to end NATO because he's working for Putin. That's the only that's the only way this could make sense. Because he's literally just building up like the US to like hate NATO, for the US and NATO to be oppositional, even though the US and NATO are literally like, NATO is supposed to be a tool for the United States. Like, I mean, and this and another thing is just like, he's like, I mean, this next story is also another thing. It's like the US has officially severed ties with the WHO. Like, I mean, they've already been like kind of doing like, they've kind of like started like, they did this like a bit ago where it's like they were like slowly severing ties, but like now it apparently has officially the US has officially terminated its partnership with the WHO, the World Health Organization. And this is literally the dumbest decision ever, because now the US literally has no way to communicate what vaccines they should be giving to people when the next flu strain happens. So yeah, when the next flu strain happens and everyone starts dying, that's what's going to happen. Everyone's going to start dying from the flu next year. I mean, this year. This year, the flu, people are going to start dying. That's just what's going to happen. And he's also doing this with like the whole Board of Peace thing. It's just like, literally, none of this makes any sense for the United States to do. Because like, this makes literally no sense. Because literally every single one of these organizations benefited the United States. Literally every single one of them. But now they don't. Because this is literally what I said. This happened literally when it came out. Like when the news story broke out, when it's like he wrote that executive order saying like, we're going to leave the WHO by the end of the first year. Literally, now that, because this is literally what happened. It's literally what happened that day. The rest of the world like freaked out because like, now you, the United States, you paid for all these benefits for the rest of the world, and now you are not paying those benefits, so now we owe you nothing. And then China stepped in and said, we will foot the bill. Right? The WHO was made for the benefit of the US. NATO was made for the benefit of the US. These organizations, like the UN, like which the Board of Peace is possibly going to undermine, these were organizations that basically benefited the United States of America. But now, it's like, what? Like, Donald Trump, literally, he's like, he does not literally, this is not America first at all. I mean this in the most honest sense, in the most honest geopolitical sense. This makes no sense. I'm not even like saying like this is a good, I mean, I'm a socialist, so these are supposed to be like good things? Like, I mean, the US is going to lose hegemony around the world? The US is going to stop gaining power on the world? And this is the thing, like, people are not understand. I don't understand how conservatives don't see this. The U.S. is now going to literally no longer be the world power. All of these things are going to make the U.S. less of a world power, which will make the life in the United States worse. Our benefits that we have, the slim things that we do have, are because the U.S. is a world power. But now we're going to start magically seeing everything drop. Like, literally, only Russia and China benefit from this exchange. Because now, like, we are seeing Western nations in Europe openly talk about being more friendly to China. Because everybody understands this. The US, literally, like, with Trump, it just shows unequivocally, like, the US is just not a valuable ally anymore. Because literally with like, I think I heard, like, I don't know if this was a quote or if this was just a joke, but it was like, people like, we can't rely on 8,000 people in Michigan to benefit the entire world order. Like, I mean, China's not going to change. China is going to be China forever. That is what's going to happen. China is going to the exact like role China is right now. They're going to have this exact same government for years. Like, Xi isn't leaving until he dies. And I don't know Xi's health, but I'm pretty sure it's in a way better health position than Donald Trump is right now. And I mean, especially under Xi. Xi has basically made it so that he is the man, like, behind the Chinese Communist Party. He is the man. Anybody who disagrees with him is gone, is disappeared. So now, whoever is the next guy is going to be a Xi fan. Whoever is the guy after that is going to also be a Xi fan. They're all going to be fans of Xi Jinping. So they're going to continue the policies of Xi Jinping. So yes, they are a more reliable ally in the world scene. They are literally a more reliable ally. And that's why all these nations are just shifting towards China. And the US is literally... like, the US is going to lose all this. You do all realize this, right? The US is... like, this is the same thing that happened during the Cold War. The US had to make changes in order to win the Cold War. Like, in the immediate aftermath of the Cold War, people were like, maybe we should start aligning with the Soviets. And like, I mean, I know it wasn't like a big worldwide thing, but like in a short term, maybe it was like, maybe this is a better idea. But like, when the US started like liberalizing some policies, then it's like, okay, now we see why the US is probably a better ally for the time being. And the Soviet Union started doing some things that people were like, okay, we don't like that. So we understand why we should probably align with the US and not the Soviets. But now we're going to see the opposite. People are now going to align more with China. Like, God, France literally openly said they're talking about aligning with China. And it's just like, that shouldn't happen normally. Not in a moralist sense, but like literally in a practical sense. That's not supposed to happen. Oh yeah, and the next news stories are about ICE. And more evidence to show why people are probably a little bit less likely for the United States to be beneficial and good in the world. One is that there was a ICE raid. A couple of ICE raids that happened. Like a lot of ICE raids have happened. Like one where they've detained a 2-year-old girl, one where they detained a 5-year-old boy, and one where they detained a man half naked in a snowstorm. And here's the big thing. The U.S. basically, like, the Department of Homeland Security has tried to make the claim, like, oh, no. You see, us dragging this random man out in the streets who did literally this random American citizen, because, you know, American citizens get benefits that no other people should have. But, like, they drag this American citizen who's done nothing wrong, so they have no reason to go and attack him at all. They're actually looking for a different Asian man. An Asian man that is already in custody, so they have no reason to look for him. And they know that. ICE knows this. The Department of Homeland Security knows this. They're just fucking lying. They're all just lying. They're just lying. They're just lying. They're just literally lying. Like, I mean, there is nothing else to it. They are just lying. This is like the 1500th lie that ICE has said. That they're looking for this person. Who's already in custody. This is like not even the first time they've done this. Like, they've literally multiple times have said like, hey, like, I mean, I literally I looked up like ICE raid where people were ICE was looking for someone who's already in jail, and it's like the Google AI thing literally said like, oh yeah, this is like happened multiple times. It's like, that's not a good sign. Like, bro, if this doesn't radicalize you on law enforcement, I don't know what does. Because like I mean, I just honestly at this point really it's just like, it just honestly is just so hard to be like, if you honestly don't understand how this is a bad thing, then you are lost. You are literally a cow happily skipping to the McDonald's slaughterhouse. That is what's happening right now. Another ICE story that happened that just shows us is the Department of Justice has, because apparently, like, at one point, it was discovered that one of the ICE agents in Minneapolis was a pastor. Wait, so you're telling me that the people who have literally been kidnapping children off the streets were actually, like, pastors? Color me shocked. So a bunch of people started protesting in his actual literal congregation because, you know, he kind of, this is the fact, you lose all of your credibility at that point. Like, literally, it's literally like the same thing about, you know, like, you want politics out of church? Then church gotta stay out of politics. That's just how it is. He decided to make it a political thing by him signing up for ICE and being a disgusting human being, you know, being the kind of person that will literally go to church and, like, proselytize about stuff where the Bible literally says, you know, treat the foreigner the same way you would treat me because you are all foreigners in the eyes of God, that kind of stuff. That fucking, like, disgusting creature. And people got mad, not at him for being a disgusting, filthy, disgusting creature who fucking, like, drags children away to be sent to fucking concentration camps in El Salvador, who just has the authority to just shoot fucking women driving out of their driveway. And people are getting mad, not at him for doing that, but getting mad that people are like, hey, that's fucked up. And even worse, because a former, this journalist, Don Lemon, arrived at that church and gave, did some journalism. Surprising, a person who used to be a mainstream journalist now actually doing real journalism, like going to a fucking, actual protest, covering the protest, and even interviewing people leaving the church. And people were mad at Don Lemon for covering, he wasn't involved with the protest, he was covering the protest. Literally, that's all he was doing. And people were mad at him for asking questions to the people there. And they were saying things that were, very unequivocally, obviously, the dumbest shit imaginable. I saw a video of Don Lemon interviewing, one of the churchgoers who was leaving, and he was saying, I don't want to do an interview, and yet he stood there and talked to Don Lemon for a decent bit of time. I don't want an interview. Fucking shut up, dude. Shut up. And Don Lemon was literally just asking, hey, bro, isn't that a little, that's a little bit weird. Aren't you your community is literally being dragged away by masked men in cars, and you don't have anything to say about it, and you're going to this church on Sunday and trying to advocate for peace and blah 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 and that kind of stuff. You're not gonna do anything about that. And he's literally just I don't know anything about that. It's yeah, that's the fucking problem. There's a fucking quote I saw. It's we're waking up to the fact in Germany, 1/3 of the population wants to kill the other third, and then 1/3 will stand there and watch it happen. That's what we're seeing. And people were so mad at Don Lemon for covering the protest that he wasn't involved with, mind you. Everyone kept saying Don Lemon was involved with the protest. Even the churchgoers kept saying, you being involved with the protest and all. They kept saying, we don't have any problems with you protesting and stuff. But now's not the time. It's fuck you, first of all. Fuck you, piece of shit. Fuck you. There is no right time to protest. That's the point of a protest, you fucking idiot. The fact that you let that fucking piece of shit on your fucking, pew, spewing their fucking nonsense about your fake god or whatever, that is why that's what led to those people going to that church. That's what led to that happening. If you fucking losers did any of the fucking vetting about the people that you led to proselytize about your bullshit, then maybe it wouldn't happen. But then again, you guys are the same people, part of the same religions that let people fucking molest kids all the time. But again, every single one of these churchgoers kept saying Don Lemon was part of the protests, even though he wasn't. I wondered why they assumed that the man of color was part of the protests. Interesting. So, now, the DOJ said, hey, let's arrest Don Lemon on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Wouldn't that be funny? And a judge said, no, you have no basis for an arrest. Because he was not involved with the protest. He was a journalist covering the protest. He had every single right to be there. And now people are threatening that judge for doing his fucking job. And another news story, big one. Apparently, ICE is trying to literally break the law. Well, they've been breaking the law a lot, but what do you mean? What do I mean specifically? Well, it turns out, federal immigration officers are asserting sweeping power to forcibly enter people's homes without a judge's warrant, according to an internal Immigration and Customs Enforcement memo obtained by the Associated Press, marking a sharp reversal of long-standing guidance meant to respect constitutional limits of government searches. The memo authorizes ICE officers to use force to enter a resident based solely on a more narrow administrative warrant to arrest someone with a final order of removal, a move that advocates say collide with the Fourth Amendment protections and upends years of advice given to immigration communities. Now, this is the thing. People are questioning, how big is this warrant? But there have been instances where they see that an administrative warrant is been issued, and then they attack and go in the fucking disgusting pigs they are. That happens. That's happened multiple times before, so people are this has to have been in the crowd. And even apparently this new piece of paper is now being used, and they're saying hey, follow this piece of paper, don't follow the previous piece of paper that we gave out. So this is another reason why we fuck the bullshit about ICE officers need training. It's they're being trained. This is what they're trained to do. You're training these people to do a specific task, and you're surprised that they're doing the task. And guys, again. If you do not understand this being, this is the thing. This is the truth of the thing. conservatives, listen to me. If you are a conservative listening to this video, listen to me clearly. The federal government is literally being told to to circumvent the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment, remember every single thing that you've seen in the media? Literally every single thing that you've seen in the media? Where a person says, they ask the simple question, you got a warrant? You got a warrant? You got a warrant? You need a warrant to enter someone's home. That is the truth. That is a constitutional protection that you have under the Fourth Amendment. They are being told to not follow that law. And conservatives, you guys are stupid if you think that this is going to stop at any point. That's why we have these constitutional amendments. That's why they were written down in the piece of paper in the founding document. That is literally why these rights were enshrined to us in the law. And they're supposed to be universal rights. This is the thing. You can't take away these universal rights from people, from one group of people, and then leave it at that. If you take them away from one group of people, what's to stop them from taking away from another group of people? Because it's already happened. You guys don't understand. This has already happened. Multiple people who are U.S. citizens have been detained, have been arrested, have been treated badly by ICE. This has happened. Native Americans, there are 4 Native Americans that I still don't know if they have been released. They've been missing for days, and we have no clue where they are. It's not gonna stop at just them. Have you literally never read the fucking poem? The Nazi poem? First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the communists. I didn't speak out because I wasn't a communist. Then they came for the trade unionists. I didn't speak out because I wasn't a trade unionist. And then they came for me, and now there was no one to stand up for me. It's not stopping at just a specific group of people. To explain this in stupid baby terms, let's explain this in comic book. Remember Batman? You know that whole Batman no-kill rule? And everyone always complains why Batman no kill? Why Batman no kill? He no kill people. It's because of the fear. It's the fear. For a person in the real world, if there is a mass vigilante who just flat out killed someone without any semblance of without any accountability, what's to stop them from doing it again? And that's the same thing with ICE. That's what's happening with ICE right now. They killed Renee Good. They killed multiple people thus far. And no one's doing anything about it. So they have no route. They have no reason to not kill more. There's no route. When they circumvent the legal laws to do one thing, just so happens, even if they're doing it for a quote-unquote good reason, what's to stop them from doing it for not good reasons and then justifying it later? Well, the laws. No, they just violated the law. They literally, in order to do the thing in the first place, they had to violate the law. If they violate the one law, what's to stop them from doing more? That's the whole point of the whole movement against police corruption. Because literally it's they break the law already in the first place, so what's to stop them from breaking the law further in the investigations and all this other stuff? But anyways, yeah, whatever. There's not much else for me to say on that because it's just the position is very clear. Abolishing ICE is the moderate position. So yeah, with that out of the way, let's move on to the main topic of this video. Let's talk about the Costa Rica election that's coming up. This election is going to be a little interesting because if I remember correctly, Costa Rica is the only nation in Latin America that has never technically felt the touch of Marea Rosa. You can make the case with Carlos Alvarado Quesada and the previous guy, Solis. And I think there was some people who literally made the claim that there was a previous administration that also technically kind of counted. But broadly, Marea Rosa, Pink Tide, didn't really touch the nation per se. They were mostly social democrat kind of and there's actually a reason for that. The reason being that broadly, Costa Rica has been relatively untouched by the United States. The U.S. did aid a faction in the 1948 Civil War in Costa Rica, but so far, for the most part, Costa Rica kind of remained relatively untouched by the United States, at least in a hard power. hard power nations seem to be a lot more likely to be involved with the pink tide than the soft touch nations. Chile had a coup that was aided directly by the United States. Brazil had a coup directly connected to the United States. Argentina, and I could probably go on, but yeah. Costa Rica broadly didn't really have much involvement with United States politics, at least somewhat. There's a little bit here and there, but we're going to get to that in a little bit. It's really more related to a later part. But, again, soft power. To say that the CIA and, the United States didn't have any power in the Costa Rica, that's not true. But, again, like I said, they aided a faction in the 1948 Civil War, and, to just spoil it a little bit, they kind of stuck around a little bit during the time period at that time. But again, broadly, they broadly kind of coasted on being a somewhat normal, quote unquote, democracy. To the point where I don't think we have to really discuss that much about a lot of because normally with all these ones, usually I look at for Latin America, just especially, I usually want to go oh, back in the 19-somethings, but we don't really have to go that far. I think we can actually just skip to the most recent administration and see how it went. And that, the current president of Costa Rica is a man by the name of Rodrigo Chavez Robles, who was elected to the presidency in 2022. He was really interesting on a first glance, because he wasn't really predicted to be one of the winners, and he was going up against a pretty prominent political party and family in Costa Rica. So he was kind of facing an uphill battle. And then he became a rather interesting person because he was kind of seen as a breath of fresh air. He wasn't the traditional party politics. He was technically affiliated with the Quesada administration, but even then he was just kind of there as token, I don't know necessarily say, I guess that would be spoiling it, but token favorability to opposition for the Quesada people. But again, for just a TLDR, Carlos Quesada was a social democrat, and he was these people were to the right wing of to the right of Quesada, just kind of a simple pendulum shift election. But again, Rodrigo Chavez Robles was seen as kind of a breath of fresh air. He's I'm not your typical politics in this era, and it's oh, interesting, but we all know that in practice, that isn't really that so well. Because who else claimed to be that? Javier Milei. And who else claimed to be that? Daniel Noboa. And who else claimed to be that? Nayib Bukele. And sure enough, just like them, Robles was basically just a right-wing demagogue. Basically a right-wing demagogue, but not in the traditional right-wing demagogue sense that Latin America has. To an extent, kind of being a Trumpian figure, attacking journalists that are critical of him, claiming that they have some alleged political bias against him. He restricted abortion. He refused to join a climate change agreement. General right-wing stuff. He treated immigrants sent from the United States like literal animals. Opening up their own immigration detention facility where they would not provide adequate medical care to the people there, especially to the children that were sent there. Again, typical right-wing populist demagogue stuff, which is very interesting considering his party is supposedly not supposed to be a right-wing party. Well, it is, but it isn't. It's if you know anything about Latin American politics, sometimes their party names can get a little crazy. A liberal party will be a fascist party, and then they'll have a party that's a socialist party, but then there'll also be a fascist party, and it's a very interesting debacle. We'll get to that in a bit. But the biggest failure, or the biggest perceived bad thing that happened under his administration was something known as the Jaguar Law, which is named after a stupid nickname that he's given himself. He's basically used Jaguar iconography for basically the entirety of his tenure. I think his campaign logo was a Jaguar, and literally even announcing the Jaguar Law, he randomly in press conferences, he'll make a jaguar sound. It's so fucking weird. But again, it's a similar thing to Javier Milei with the chainsaw thing, or Nayib Bukele with his tracksuit, or Daniel Ortega in his tracksuit. It's just kind of seeing a way to kind of connect with people, even though they're very clearly just a right-wing demagogue. But The idea behind the Jaguar Law was meant to boost the country's development by limiting the power of the comptroller of the country, who controls how the finances are conducted in the nation. You know, like, they say, like, this funding will be used for this funding will be used on this, and then they also have to make it publicly known, like, this is what the funding is being used for, like, 8% of the budget is going towards this, or 7% of the budget is going towards this, that kind of stuff. But the way the Jaguar Law was supposed to go was that the comptroller would lose a lot of that power, and people were concerned that this would lead to weakening transparency about how the government would use the funds and would lead to more corruption. And corruption and, like, shadiness in regards to the elections were also a little bit of a concern for them as well, because one of the things that happened was that he made a public statement to advocate for his political party to win more seats in the upcoming election, which is a thing that you're not supposed to do in Costa Rica, which did lead to possible impeachments against him, but he survived the impeachment, so they didn't really get to do much about that. But what are the major issues for Costa Rica in the election? Well, one, a very similar one to a lot of other Latin American countries, is the issue of crime. You know, people are concerned about the rise in crime. There's also concerns about social service funding and unemployment. And those are kind of the main issues that Costa Rican political parties are focusing on in this upcoming election. And speaking of, let's get into the candidates. There are 20 presidential candidates in the race, but of course, not all these presidential candidates are important. And especially important is because Costa Rica has a 2-round system. So the idea is, you know, if no candidate gets 40% in the first round, there's going to be a runoff between the two, like, the top 2 vote getters. So people are kind of looking at, like, but who is actually likely to make it to the second round? And people broadly conclude that there's broadly 5 candidates that are going to probably going to be making it to the second round. And we're going to be going over them plus one extra one, just for the sake of, like, just one more thing. Okay. So the first candidate we're going to mention is the federal deputy Luz Mari Alpizar, who is representing the Social Democratic Progress Party, which is Rodrigo Robles' party, which is where you're going to lead, which is where you understand the confusion. Because, like, the name of the party, Social Democrat Progress, kind of makes you think party leans one way, but, you know, given, you know, other things, it's like, clearly it does not. It's a more center-right political party that espouses economic liberal ideas. The next candidate is a singer federal deputy and 2-time presidential candidate, Fabricio Alvaro, who represents the New Republic Party, which is an evangelical Christian conservative party. But, Luz was kind of seen as, like, more of the, like, I just added her because, you know, she's the incumbent party, so kind of makes sense to talk about her. But also, Fabricio, even though he is also seen as, like, relatively decent in the pollsters, really, it seems that the election kind of, like, there are 4 people who really do seem like these are the 4 to focus on, and that's why there's a lot more to say about these 4 candidates. A lot of people are, like, literally determining these are the 4 candidates that people are focusing on. So first, we have former cabinet minister Alvaro Ramos Chavez, who represents the National Liberation Party, which is a party that espouses the ideology of Figueresism, which is a, like, social democratic tendency espoused by Jose Figueres Ferrer, who was basically the revolutionary leader that was aided by the United States, and who revealed later in life that he basically, the reason why the country became so stabilized after the revolution and kind of, like, became, like, that post-war, like, you know, thing where, like, there wasn't a lot of meddling was because there was a lot of meddling, basically saying that the nation was stabilized by the CIA. He makes the claim that they didn't, like, do, like, a lot of things, but, like, he basically says, like, yeah, they basically, like, financed our nation for a decent bit of time. Now, what's very interesting is that this party is kind of in a little bit of a bind, because this party, the National Liberation Party, for lack of a better term, is like the PRI in Mexico and, like, a lot of other political parties of that, like, kind of, like, era. Like, you know, again, you know, it's broadly like a social democratic party, but, like, it's, like, I mean, it's broadly, like, the political party that is basically, like, de facto governed for a long period of time. Like, just by a quick glance of the results, it looks like 2018 was the election where things really shifted over the edge, and it was purely because it's purely because, like, they got third place. They usually, like, flip-flopped first and second place. They just really did not do so hot in 2018. But the PLN kind of got, like, a bit of a reputation of, like, being, like, the establishment in the country. And, that's kind of where, like, the oppositional figures of, like, Quesada and, like, right-wing figures like Robles kind of, like, were able to, like, be, like, that's where they're able to get their base. Like, we're not them. But another problem is that currently, like, due to that fact, Alvaro is actually kind of trying to distance himself from his own party. Like, he's basically trying to say, like, I'm basically running with this party purely as just, like, a ballot line. I'm not really, like, even though he is a prominent member of the party, but he's basically trying to be like, I represent a new phase for this party. Also helped by the fact that there's apparently a lot of infighting within the party, so, like, again, like, people are just like, maybe he's, like, literally is a new face. And what are some of the platform planks that he is running on for this election? Well, he calls for the creation of a, quote, smart security nerve center that would use technology to prevent threats, strengthening the Social Security Fund, creating community health, like mental health services, advocate for, like, tourism, trade, and sustainability by offering development credit and tax support, and public-private projects and partnerships. Those are basically just, like, standard, like, lib-ish stuff. Again, like, whatever, standard. The next candidate is former First Lady Claudia Dobles Carmango, who is, like, she was the wife of Carlos Quesada, and she is running under the Citizen Action Coalition, which is a merger of a local party called the National Democratic Agenda, but also the center-left Citizens Action Party, which the Citizens Action Party is, like, again, like, it's a broadly social democratic party. It also technically espouses the ideology of Figuerism, but they kind of, like, come at it as, like, a more, like, leftish version of it, like a more progressive version. I think one of the primary concerns of them was, like, social policies, that kind of stuff, but broadly they are, like, a broadly, like, center-left social democratic party, fine, but not, like, particularly, like, notable. Like, I mentioned it in, like, the fucking, like, list, and it's, like, Solis and Quesada, two people of this party, they did fine, but they weren't really, like, that impressive. Now, her major platform planks are, spending 8% of their GDP on education, which is what it's supposed to be. Like, according to the Constitution, or, like, the laws that are in place in the country, it is supposed to be that 8% of the GDP is supposed to be spent on education. But every time the government, like, releases their, like, agenda, like, their, like, audit or whatever, to explain how much money they are spending on education, it turns out they're always coming up, like, a little bit short, like 7%, 6%, less than that, but, like, they're just like, we need to make sure that we actually do spend that 8% on education. Specifically, trying to put a lot of money into tech for schools. They want to create a national police task force and put a lot of funding into cultural centers like libraries, trying to focus a little more on, like, they want to focus a lot more on, like, it's a similar thing, it's like the thing about, like, crime, like, how do we focus on crime, then they want to focus on, like, the societal problems. The next candidate is a federal deputy by the name of Ariel Robles, who is running with the Frente Amplio, or Broad Front, which is the left-wing party of Costa Rica. Like, it's like, I mean, in Costa Rican politics, the Citizens Action Movement is, like, the center-left party, and, this party would be considered the, real left-wing party. Like, or, I don't know, like, would the PAC kind of be considered, like, the quote-unquote left-wing party, and this would be considered the far-left party? I guess of the mainstream parties, this would probably be the furthest left party, but, it's like, socialism of the 21st century, part of the Sao Paulo Forum, it's, like, again, like, this is probably the party that is, like, probably the furthest left in, like, mainstream discourse in Costa Rica. There are, parties that are to the left of it. But I guess let's just take a little look at the last presidential election just so we can understand, like, how this is. In the last Costa Rican election, the candidates, the Broad Front got 6th place in the election, but the closest candidate, the Citizens Action Party got less than that, but the party that is further, the closest party that is further to left than the Frente Amplio was the Workers' Party, that got literally 3rd to last. And for another understanding, in the previous election, the party that was, the party that got that low of results got dead last in that election in the Broad Front, I think. It got 8th. So yeah, again, you're seeing, the Broad Front is the most viable of the party. It is the furthest left party that is viable. Which has led to, of course, just your standard, questions about, the party or whatever. And, some things are positive, some things are negative, but, broadly the party. I think Robles, Ariel Robles is kind of meant to be kind of a new-ish face. A new, a new guy. I'm a new guy. I'm here to, be the new face of the party moving forward. What are some of the policies that he wants to implement? He wants to create universal cash transfers for people in poverty, create a state-run cannabis institute, and allocate funding to crime prevention. I think his specific implementation is tough-ish on crime, but the next candidate. Let's move on to the last candidate. It's former minister of the presidency of Costa Rica, Laura Fernandez, who is running under a political party called the Sovereign People's Party, which is a broadly right-wing populist party, with it serving as another interesting element, because the thing is, this party kind of took over, Robles's movement? Robles's party is still around, but it seems due to the fact that Fernandez was a member of the government, and she's a prominent member of the government, she basically was able to swallow up all the momentum that really could come from his government. And due to that fact, they were able to, she was able to swallow up the support. Now let's move on to the polls. Polls are, they're kind of going a very easy route. Current polling has Fernandez winning, and, none of the other major candidates really come close to her results. For an example, let us take a look at the most recent poll that has been conducted. It has Fernandez with 39.9% of the vote, and the next candidate that is polling is Ramos with 6%, then Dobles with 5.2%, Alvarado with 1.7, and Robles with 3.5. And most of the other polls kind of generally have that same consensus. Fernandez is overwhelmingly polling higher than all of the candidates, and no one else is even remotely coming close. But there are a lot of other things that are real. That's one of the things. There are a lot of elements about it that really are showing that. Let's just get out of the way. Statistically, that's not possible. Unless there's massive electoral rigging, statistically, it's not possible for the candidate to get that many to have a fair election with that big of a gap. And similar to how I mentioned in the earlier segment of this one, the people who are saying they don't want to vote for any of the candidates, the ones who are saying they don't want to vote for any of the candidates are relatively small, 0.7, 0.3, 0.3, 2.8. But the ones that are they don't have a response, that they're not sure, are relatively high. 38.8, 29.8, 32, 29, 34.5, 11, 33.8, 41.7. As it's showing, there's a lot of people who are just not entirely sure who they want to back in the election quite yet. Another thing that's interesting about the results is, let's just take a brief look at the results of her, let's just take a look at Fernandez's results in all of the polls ever since the candidates were finalized. And you'll see 25%, 31.2, 28.1, 37.8, 21.4, 37.7, 30, 32.8, 38, 27.4, 39.4, 40.7, 40.3, 42.4, 42.5, 40, 43.2, and 39.9. As you see, the numbers, recently the numbers have gotten to the point where she is looking somewhat comfortable, but they're like either just above the 40% threshold or just under the 40% threshold. And keep in mind, this is with a lot of people who don't know who they're going to vote in the next who they're going to vote for in this election. So again, it seems that there's enough wiggle room for at least one of the other candidates to go in. Let's just do a little bit of a hypothetical. 38.8. That's a pretty big number. 39.9. That's a pretty decent number as well. So literally, it doesn't matter if every single one of those people all joined. I guess if all those people came together and voted for one candidate, then maybe there wouldn't be a need for a runoff. But statistically, they're going to be evenly divided amongst the other top contenders at least. I think it'll be mostly in the top contenders, but they could also be in the bottom contenders or whatever. But it seems that they will be more than it's just very likely that they're going to it just seems likely that they're just going to be able to have enough to get a decent number of votes to go to a runoff. And the last thing that's also interesting is that apparently in Costa Rica, polls are actually not that good. The 2014 elections had Luis Guillermo Solis not making it to the second round. The 2018 polls said that Carlos Alvarado wouldn't make it to the second round. And the 2022 polls said that Rodrigo Chavez wouldn't make it to the second round. In fact, if I remember correctly, I think the polls at this point in the election actually had all three candidates making it to third place. So I think it's actually be more interesting to look at who's polling third and see if they are going to and if we're actually looking at third place, I think Dobles might be the candidates who might be winning. It's Dobles or Robles. They on and off switched third and fourth place, so maybe one of them are going to make it through. So yeah, just to do a quick understanding, poll-wise, I'm going to predict that this will go to a runoff. I really do think that a runoff I don't think, based on the information I have, I don't see any reason why this is just, would be a landslide. And, yeah, I just think that it just seems like it's more likely that there will be a runoff election, obviously. Who will make it to the runoff election? I don't know. I would just probably say, for a safe bet, Fernandez would probably make it to the runoff. She seems like the most likely candidate to make it to represent the right wing in the runoff. But who is going to run against her? I would hope that it would be, I would hope that it would be Robles, but I think it's more likely to be Dobles, and Dobles isn't that bad of a candidate either. So I'd be fine with her, I guess. Either way, I just don't want a right-wing candidate winning. So yeah. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and click the bell to find a future video mine comes out. And if you want more content from me, consider supporting me on Patreon.